Hello, I'm Patrice Wood. Southern New England has lost a television journalist whose name is synonymous with honesty, integrity, and dedication to his profession. Doug White devoted his life to upholding the highest standards in broadcasting. His death is a tremendous loss for his family, his co-workers, and for thousands of loyal viewers. Tonight, we look back at Doug's remarkable career, not only to mourn our loss, but to celebrate his many achievements. And we begin with NBC 10's morning news anchor, Frank Coletta. Frank, you and Doug White started here at Channel 10 at about the same time. What are some of your memories?
Yep, 1978. Doug joined the station as an already experienced TV news reporter and anchorman, and I was part of a small crew of experienced radio journalists who were making the move to television. I knew very little about television, and Doug was just the perfect guy to work with because he was not afraid of sharing his expertise and of teaching us the things we needed to know, the little things about television. My job was assignment editor, and I had to assign him to stories. And he would tell me, "That's a great story, Frank. Now, what angle do you think I should take? What's your best advice? How should I approach this story?" And I'm thinking, he's asking me for advice, but it became very obvious very quickly that what he was really doing, since he didn't need the advice, was guiding me, the rookie assignment editor, on how better to plan stories and how better to determine the best angle for a story.
Over the years, Frank has produced many flashback stories for our audience. Tonight, his subject is Doug White.
Governor, in a recent speech to the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council, you promised no new taxes next year.
Doug White's arrival here at NBC 10 in 1978 threw him right into the campaign season and the election coverage that year.
Very much. Party Chairman Joe DeStefano speaking with us at Democratic State Headquarters on Dorrance Street in downtown Providence.
A number of them said that they were impressed by the campaign that Claudine Schneider mounted against the incumbent.
From there, we got to see the range of his reporting abilities, from coverage of the Pope's historic visit to Boston in 1979 to the day someone tried to take the Pope's life.
He was patting a child on the head when the shots rang out in St. Peter's Square today in Rome.
And when President Clinton visited our studios for a special broadcast town meeting, Doug was the one who kept it orderly and interesting.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your presentation. I must tell you that when we learned last week that you were going to be with us, we received literally thousands of phone calls from folks asking to be in our audience. And the folks you see here were selected from a list of just about 1,000.
And when legendary Senator Claiborne Pell announced his retirement, it was Doug White who got the one-on-one interview.
Thank you again.
Great.
All the best.
Thank you.
Newsmakers and the audience always felt comfortable with Doug because Doug was always so down-to-earth and, well, normal, even when caught off guard.
Good evening. I was just sucking down a coffee bun and didn't time it awfully well. Some of it is still stuck to the roof of my mouth. And I'm sorry.
The other thing you always noticed with Doug is that nothing was ever more important than his family, from his desk full of the pictures of his children and grandchildren to his references to family on air, like this observation just after the great blizzard of 1978.
I remember my two youngsters when we were walking down Warwick Avenue to try to make it to the supermarket for the first time. The oldest boy saw all the helicopters up above, and that's when they were trying to bring in the C-5A over at Green Airport. And he said, gee, Daddy, this looks like something right out of MASH. I guess we've covered just about everything for tonight. That's it. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
Good night.
And joining us now is NBC 10's Chief I-Team reporter, Jim Terracani. Jim, what impact did Doug have on you and your career?
He just had a lot of wisdom about journalism. He was a stickler on accuracy and grammar, as you know.
Right.
And you know, and after all the years on the anchor desk, he never lost his nose for news and that excitement about finding a story. I can't tell you how many afternoons he would come in and walk up to my desk and say, "Hey, I ran across this guy in the grocery store this morning, and you know, he's got this information, and I got his telephone number for you," and he'd be really excited about it and really interested in it. And 2 days later, he'd say, "How you doing on that story?" And that's so rare in our business today when a guy, as you know, is on the anchor desk. And you can kind of lose touch with your journalistic roots, but he never did. He was somebody to really look up to in the newsroom.
One of the biggest stories of the decade was Plunder Dome, and that was a big story here at Channel 10. But his main concern throughout it all was about you and how your family and you were handling all this.
Yeah, he called often, and he would come in when I was going through the investigation, and every day just like hang in there, you know. I can't use some of the colorful language he used, but it was all in a very, you know, warm-hearted way to like stick in there and don't let the guys get you down type of thing, you know. And to hear it from Doug was just great because he had been there, done that, seen it all in this business, and he understood the issue and how important it was, not just for me, but for our station and for our business, our profession. And so it was just great knowing he was on my side, and you know, he's kind of like a pillar that you can put your arms around and say, hey, you know, Doug's with me. And it was so great to have that.
Jim Terracani, thank you very much. Journalistic integrity is vitally important to our industry. Doug White's work represented the highest level of integrity throughout his career. Jim takes a look now at Doug's life as a reporter.
CBS had Morrow and Cronkite. Channel 10 had Doug White. After spending years as a field reporter, Doug became our anchor in more ways than one. He was a stickler for accuracy and grammar. He insisted on good, clear writing and often reminded young reporters that we as journalists are here for one reason, to inform the public. Doug was a student of the news. Even though he was our mentor, Doug was always willing to learn new ways to communicate to the public, find new angles to stories, look for a better way to be firm but fair. In an age when scripted questions and answers from anchorman to field reporter are all too common, Doug's questions were genuine. He would listen to a reporter's story and then ask a question that would further the viewer's understanding of the issue. And when appropriate, he could provide a bit of deadpan humor that could put a smile on the most cynical reporter. Doug was someone we could all look up to. He'd been there, done that in journalism. His silky voice and straightforward delivery made him the most trusted anchorman in Southeastern New England. Credible, passionate about his profession, and one of the best interviewers I've ever seen. Doug's high journalistic standards became a model for all of us, reporters, producers, photographers, and even his bosses. Everyone in the NBC 10 newsroom benefited from Doug's professionalism. The best we can do now is carry on his tradition, not for ourselves, but for the viewers that Doug held in such high esteem.
Our weekend anchor Kelly McGee joins us now with her memories of working with Doug White. What did you admire about him, Kelly?
Oh, there were so many things. I think one of the things I admired most about Doug was the fact that he took what he did very seriously. But as we all know, he never took himself that seriously. And that is a wonderful, admirable quality for someone who works in the pressure cooker environment that is a newsroom. You know, one of the great things about Doug was I loved his sense of humor. On St. Patrick's Day, he would only address me in an Irish brogue. So Doug.
That is so Doug. Do you remember the first day you met him?
Oh boy, do I ever. Well, like so many others, I grew up watching Channel 10 and watching Doug. And when I got here, I spotted him across the newsroom. And I was a little nervous about going over to him, so I spent a few minutes trying to work up the courage. And he beat me to the punch. He came over to my desk and actually held out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Doug. You'll probably see me around on the night shift." And I thought to myself, wow, he's introducing himself to me. But, you know, that was my first taste of who Doug was.
Down to earth,
down to earth,
sincere,
and truly sincere. And he never wavered from that. He was just a sincere, wonderful, wonderful guy.
There were many proud moments in Doug White's career. A highlight came in 1981 when Doug won an Emmy Award.
And the winner is WJAR TV, Terremoto.
Award, reporter Doug White, WJAR TV.
I'm pleased to be able to say that I work for the best station in southeastern New England, and this is not our first, it's not our second, it's not going to be our last. Thank you all so much, very much. I'm real proud of you guys. Matthew and Jonathan, you can go to bed now. Daddy's all through.
I worked with Doug White for many years. Here are some of my reflections on what his friendship and guidance meant to me.
Leading news station. This is Newswatch 10.
Good evening, I'm Patrice Wood. John Sweeney is off tonight.
And I'm Doug White.
It was 1980 when this team first hit the screen. The calm, assured Doug White, the anchorman with the velvet voice, and the still wet behind the ears reporter. The mentoring began, and so did a treasured, everlasting friendship.
Was a Coventry student.
The Bates College graduate with a degree in English was more than willing to share his knowledge and wisdom with all of us. The go-to guy for questions about grammar, Rhode Islanders and their history, and judgment calls.
After being cleared of all but one charge.
In the television news business, where split-second decisions are made on a regular basis, Doug was always the voice of reason. He good-naturedly went along with experiments like a weather office in a sunroom.
You wonder what Doug White does when he's not on the air.
What was that one over there, Doug, that's filled with water?
Consider saying please.
Please?
News Channel 10 tonight at 6, a Plunder Dome witness at...
In serious matters, though, his stance was firm. Journalistic ethics, accuracy, and sensitivity in covering the news. And it was always Doug who could counter the stress of news gathering with his running commentary during newscasts. While airing a news video of a brawl somewhere in the world, Doug would quip when the mics were off, "I didn't realize a Channel 10 staff meeting had been called." That dry sense of humor made the worst day's news bearable.
No hairspray.
Just cost you $50, lady.
Never letting us take ourselves too seriously.
Childlike stuff. None of this rocking. Oh my God! What's going on? Help!
I don't believe this. There's always this problem on the waterfront, folks.
Let's go back to the studio before it's too late. Bye-bye.
This will be a nice little number to put on your resume tape.
Getting the story and getting it right, always foremost on this newsman's mind. He used to say, it takes years to earn the public trust, and it can be lost in seconds. So he guarded the integrity of the NBC 10 newsroom like a watchdog.
The team you trust.
Chief Meteorologist Gary Lay joins us now. Tell us about your friendship, Gary.
Well, first of all, Patrice, I don't know about you, but I'm in shock again. I mean, I'm numb. I really am. I can't believe, although we've all seen him in the last couple of weeks and knew he wasn't doing well, I still can't believe that he's not here.
It's hard to go on without him.
It really is. And you know, he was such, I mean, he was obviously the man in the newsroom and the man with us for 24 years. I mean, you and me and Frank and Doug have been together for 24 years, and he could always pull us through. If we were having a rocky show, and people at home don't know how often things aren't going completely smoothly on air, and somehow we'd fasten our seatbelts, as he would say, and skid to an end right at the end of the runway, and on to Brokaw we'd go.
And then he'd stop and give everybody else the credit for a smooth landing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Gary. We want to extend our condolences to Doug White's family and to thank them for helping us to create this tribute to Doug. Here, with pictures provided by his family, we share a private look into a very public life. Sports Team 10's Frank Carpano is with us now. You worked with Doug for decades, and he was a friend, too.
He was. You know, when I first arrived here in 1980, you want to bond with a big guy, and we found that in the Red Sox. I found out right away that Doug White was a Red Sox fan. I mean, he played every news story right down the middle, but there was really no doubt about which Major League Baseball team that he rooted for. And I remember back in 1986, one of our coworkers decided we were going to see a game towards the end of the season, and we just picked a game, and it turned out that that was a game that the Red Sox clinched a playoff spot, and in 1986 they went to the World Series. And I know there was nobody happier at that time than Doug. Unfortunately, we were disappointed that the Red Sox lost that year, and I know that Doug was one of the guys I thought of in 2004 when the Red Sox finally clinched that World Series title.
All right, thank you very much, Frank Carpano, for sharing your thoughts about Doug White. Viewers have flooded our website, turnto10.com, with tributes to Doug White. Here are just a few examples from the hundreds of heartfelt messages. There's a huge empty spot in Rhode Island tonight. You won't see it on the map. It's in the hearts of all of us who cared about Doug. God bless you, Doug. We love you. Our respect for his integrity, honesty, and fair-minded reporting has always been the magnet that drew my wife and me to watch Channel 10. I have missed his presence over the last year and was saddened when I learned of his passing. Doug was a Rhode Island institution. And finally, this from the family of Doug White. We would like to thank everyone for the cards, emails, and prayers over the past year. This overwhelming show of support has been deeply appreciated. Our 6 and 11 o'clock anchor, Gene Valicenti, joins us now. What are your thoughts about Doug White, Gene?
Well, I guess you have to do the job to maybe know the job. Regis Philbin always quotes his mother about a career in television. The poorhouse is right around the corner. Don't get too comfortable. So, you know, as an anchor, you know that a 5-year run is a good run. More than 25 years is an extraordinary run. So when you look back on a run like that, you've got to have the goods to deliver. You've got to have the likability quotient. You've got to have the magic that makes for a successful career and a successful anchor. And Doug can certainly, we can look back on that career and say, well, he had it. He had that nebulous quality that distinguishes one from another.
He was always a voice of reason in the newsroom.
He was. I remember him sitting at his desk and getting up to do his job day in and day out. You know, this is a job. People only see us for 30 minutes at a time, but there's 8 hours of preparation before that, and then you come in Monday to Friday, and you settle into a routine. So I think he enjoyed working here.
Gene, thank you for joining us. Gene has spoken to people throughout the community about the loss of a man who was part of so many lives here in southern New England. Here's the reaction to Doug White's passing.
There's some sad news to report tonight. Doug White, one of the most recognized men in local television news and a personal friend of mine, died today after a battle with cancer.
The Rhode Island media is mourning a great loss tonight.
We are sad to report the passing of veteran anchorman Doug White.
The news of Doug's passing prompts a flood of memories from colleagues and newsmakers alike. Steve Kaminas was Doug's first boss at Channel 10.
About 1978, he became available and he let me know. And very easily we sat down in a pizza parlor in Warwick, very humbling place. For both of us it was appropriate, and we worked out a deal very quickly.
You hired Doug at Channel 10.
Right.
And Walter Cryan hired both of you at Channel 12 before that.
That's exactly right, and it was a good group of professionals at Channel 12. Eventually, though, there was a migration over to Channel 10, and Doug and I joined that group at separate times.
That was probably 1972, I'd say. And Doug was in Worcester at the time, working for UHF station. So I had to really wine and dine him to get him into Providence. So he said, "Do you think it's a good move? Do you think it'll be a lateral move?" I said, "It'll be a great move for you."
Former Governor Bruce Sunland was Doug's top boss at Channel 10 when he ran the old outlet company.
Somebody said, "Bruce, he was part of the family," and that's a good way of putting it. Doug White was part of the family.
Paw Sox owner Ben Mondor was a longtime friend.
And his son works here, and he posted daily on it. But it's a shock when you lose an old friend. We got to know him when we came here in '77, Mike and I, and we became very friendly with him.
The full gamut, there he is with dark hair many years ago, and then a painting from a few years ago with light hair.
And Charlie Hall poked fun in cartoons and the Ocean State Follies, and Doug laughed along.
'Cause our hairdos, my friend, never blow in the wind. My hair never blows in the wind.
Betty Jo Cagini runs our news department these days.
Anchor was a perfect term to describe Doug White. He was our anchor in so many ways. It was always journalism that came first. That was the thing that he taught all of us. No matter how bad your day was, no matter how many things you had on your plate, stop, take the time, look at the story, make sure it's fair, accurate, and balanced. And that's timeless.
And Lisa Churchville runs the station.
When you would watch him in public environments where he would be meeting people, he was so genuine. And his affection so sincere. People really warmed up to him immediately. When I read the condolences that people have written on our website, so often they're about a moment in time, an encounter with Doug that is a real encounter with a real person.
And retired Bishop Robert Mulvey, who ran the Diocese of Providence, remembers Doug from many charity events, as a regular viewer, and from a visit at home just a couple of weeks ago.
Doug was just someone who was sitting in the living room with you at night and no matter how bad the news was, you know, somehow or other, you weren't threatened by it when Doug gave it to you, whether it was good or bad, horrifying or very uplifting. He just was sharing this with you.
And joining us now is NBC 10 reporter and longtime friend of Doug White, Larry Estepo. He was such a sincere guy, and he had a strong dislike for phoniness. I think that sincerity came right through the television. That's why viewers loved him so much.
It did. I mean, rather, somebody wrote a book called The Camera Never Blinks, and it doesn't. You know, you can't pretend to be somebody you're not. After all, we're invited into people's homes every day. And now with remote controls, I mean, they can vote instantaneously. If they don't like you or they think you're phony, click, they're on to another station. But clearly they didn't do that with Doug. If anything else, at 6:58 or 5:58, people made the decision to watch him. He had that genuineness. He had that sense that you're really seeing somebody who's as much a regular guy as he can be in this very unnatural setting. But I think that naturalness and that genuineness came through the camera.
Along with NBC 10 photojournalist Albert Gamble and the assistance of many coworkers here at the station, Larry has assembled our final story for this tribute to Doug White.
Now, from Southern New England's leading news station, Doug White.
People spanning a generation invited Doug White into their homes each night as they would a friend. The voice as familiar as family. The image on TV like a favorite picture hanging on your wall.
Hello, I'm Doug White, and welcome to NBC 10 Biography.
Doug's on-air biography at Channel 10 spanned 4 decades into a new century.
Sure will.
The man who hired him in 1978 remembers his good fortune. Another station in town didn't renew his contract.
I personally was impressed with the intensity with which he celebrated the Mass.
Doug, in 1979, on John Paul's visit to Boston. Popes, presidents.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States.
Doug covered them all. And in 1994, when that televised town hall meeting ended, you can actually hear the president asking for a little affirmation from the most recognized man in local TV.
Thank you.
He asks, I think it went well, didn't you? If it involved Doug, it did.
For those of you who have been without electricity, this may be your first look at the damage caused by Hurricane Bob.
Bob in 1991, the blizzard of '78. In any kind of calamity, storms, a political firestorm, the banking implosion, we turned to Doug's calm, reassuring manner. At times of almost unbearable sorrow and unbridled joy.
Red Sox fans have longed to hear it.
Yes, he abandoned that fierce objectivity for his Sox. Doug seemed like one of us, even standing next to Tom Brokaw, or getting the only one-on-one interview when Senator Claiborne Pell retired.
Thank you again.
Great.
All the best.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Doug, for your quiet leadership in the newsroom, for consistency in a business that champions change, a man who set standards in his own work and expected them in others, a man of character, and at times a real character. Doug enjoyed a good laugh and caused more than a few. A less secure man might take himself too seriously. Not Doug. He insisted on accuracy, honesty, integrity because he exuded them. But he treasured family above all. Look at his desk, filled with photos of his wife Barbara, the captain, as he'd call her with a wink, though not in her presence, sons Jonathan and Matt, and parenthood's ultimate reward, grandchildren. And this, as he accepted his Silver Circle Emmy Award in 1998, recognizing 25 years of achievement. It provides a rare glimpse of the emotion he could never reveal because his professionalism demanded impartiality.
And a special thanks to my sons, Jonathan and Matt, and my beautiful new daughter-in-law, Cassie, and my patient wife, Barbara, for tolerating and dealing with 30 years of Dad on the night shift.
The night shift misses you, Doug, along with so many Southern New Englanders spending so many years.
I think to myself,
Author and painter Ashley Brilliant's epitaph reads, "Before I knew the best part of my life had come, it had gone. But the best parts of your life, Doug, have left us so many indelible images. A life in a public bubble that you somehow managed to keep private, even through the ravages of cancer. Videotape will give Doug a kind of immortality, and so can we, by remembering. So instead of goodbye, as you said so many times, Doug, we'll just say goodnight."
I'm Doug White, inviting you to join us again.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being with us. I'm Doug White, and be sure to join us next time for another edition of NBC 10 Biographies.
It's not easy to end this presentation, but it helps if we keep in mind that the influence of our friend and colleague, Doug White, will be with us for the rest of our lives. Doug's attention to detail, his sense of fair play and good taste, and above all, his passion for journalism touched everyone who ever worked with him or watched any broadcast that featured him. He will be deeply missed, long admired, and never forgotten by all of us. I'm Patrice Wood. We thank you for watching this tribute to Doug White.